You are now listening to the Game and Story podcast. Movies, television, video games, and everything in between. What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to the Game and Story podcast. Episode 5. We've made it. 5 episodes.
5
Goodness.
already?
Yeah, 5 episodes already. That's something to be proud of, I think. That should be a milestone somewhere. But we're not going to commemorate it with a milestone. We're going to commemorate it instead with a discussion or retro review of the Josstice League, also known as the Joss Whedon version of the Josstice League. And we watched it a few days ago. I have some very strong opinions about it. I know Michelle does.
So, other than the obvious.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let's get stuck into it. Let's start with the obvious. The very opening scene and the mustache, or lack thereof, and the CGI face. Oh my god. Just... never mind storyline. Like, put all of that aside just for a second. But behold that CGI monstrosity of a face.
Honestly, when I first saw it, right, I at first doubted, is Henry Cavill still in this movie? Did they get a look-alike?
A look-alike. That's being charitable because he doesn't look like Henry Cavill. It looks like they got a body double who had some really bad, reconstructive surgery to attempt to look like Henry Cavill.
Maybe a razor burn above his lip.
And he was pouting the entire time. And that happens throughout the entire movie, regardless of what you think about the storyline, right? You go through the movie, and every time you see Henry Cavill, 8 times out of 10, it is the CGI Henry Cavill, which then shows us how much of the movie was reshot by Joss Whedon. And as a consequence of that, we have to put up with mustache face the entire movie. Like, wow. Okay, I know we got started on the CGI face, but let's dial it back a little bit and talk about the storyline, right? So the movie opens with Superman talking to a kid on a camera phone, and it's actually not a badly written scene, right? It sort of shows Superman being the everyday relatable hero that he's supposed to be, talking to kids and reassuring them and stuff like that. That's great. But then you have the situation where the rest of the movie just spirals from there, right? We get like a very sort of like a half-baked thing about something called a Unity, which has never been mentioned before in the entire DC cinematic universe up to that point. And we have Steppenwolf, the villain, with a buttload of mommy issues. Oh, where's mother? Show me mother. My mother is in a box. A lot of Norman Bates stuff going on there.
But the mother box thing, is that the same as in the comics?
It depends, because the whole mother box stuff, I'm not entirely sure, because you see, unlike most people, I don't religiously follow the comics. I follow the characters, but not the comics. And it's hard to say whether there's been something similar to this. I think that there might have been, but the way that it's put across in this instance is that in order for Steppenwolf to conquer a planet, he has to bring the 3 mother boxes together to create the Unity and then terraform. Which seems like an awfully complicated way of terraforming, because as we saw in Man of Steel, they just had like this big giant machine that landed on a planet, pumped out a lot of gas, did a lot of like terraforming that way. And, surely Darkseid and Steppenwolf are more technologically advanced than the Kryptonians, who are, they're supposedly a more advanced civilization already. So it just seems like convoluted from the very beginning. Like, why would you need 3 mother boxes to come together? After, if we follow the prequel that was in the movie, they apparently attacked 6,000 years earlier. And it took him 6,000 years to recover and finally make his way back to Earth and get all the mother boxes. It just...
Such an awful coincidence, though.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
So... And then, of course, he gets all the mother boxes, and, the Amazons failed to protect the mother box. The Atlanteans failed to protect their mother box. The humans buried their mother box in, 6 feet of ground.
And we're expected to believe the box that the humans kept was the very last one to be found.
Yeah.
Like, it was just buried under the earth.
Yeah, and with all their advanced scanning technology, which we saw Cyborg employ, right? where he's like, oh, you know, I'm searching the planet for like energy signatures, and they could find the mother boxes that way. So why wouldn't Steppenwolf have done that and immediately found the Earth mother box? It's just, I don't know. I mean,
It's like, okay, don't think too much. Moving on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there were lots of problems with the movie, but before we dive into the problems with the movie, let's talk about the good bits. This is where you chime in with some good bits because I'm struggling.
I'm trying to remember. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like I have problem with the pacing of the movie.
Yeah.
The script is okay with some really odd bits. It's like they're trying to be clever, but it does not work.
Yeah. We're supposed
Right.
to. This is supposed to be the good bit segment.
I know. I'm trying to think. Good bits.
Okay.
Okay, I enjoyed the Flash.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Flash is
enjoyed
good.
the Flash.
Yeah, that was a very interesting interpretation of the Flash. Because you know, in the TV show The Flash, the Flash is sort of very socially well adjusted, and he's very nice and very likable. Everybody wants to be friends with the Flash except for the villains. Whereas this Flash he's awkward, he's dorky, he's
Yes.
nerdy, and he's understandably because he suffered a trauma, right? Like we saw briefly in the backstory, his father is in prison for murder of the mother, and you know he really, as we all know, the mother didn't actually die at the father's hands. So you know that's a very important part of the Flash's backstory, and I suppose this version of the Flash reacted the way he did by becoming essentially a drifter, right? Like moving from one job to another, not really making friends with anybody. So the Flash was good, like Ezra Miller.
Okay, but I have one question though. Where did his suit come from?
Well, he made it.
He made it. Okay.
Yeah.
Did he have money? Because it looked like he was poor.
Yeah, but then when you saw his lair, he had all these computer screens and everything. So maybe, you know, he, according to what the dad said, Henry Allen said, he's working like 3 jobs. So maybe he saved up enough to buy it, or if he just swiped it. You know, he's the Flash. So,
Okay.
and he's not really the Flash yet. He's not really a superhero. He's just, as one of the best lines in the movie was from the Flash, where he's like, I don't do battle. I just, I just push people and run away.
Push them a bit.
And run away. You know, so, you know, he isn't really a superhero yet in the movie universe. So I suppose we can forgive the petty crime, you know, in just stealing TV monitors and stuff. Shout out to Blackpink for making a cameo appearance in the Justice League, which nobody talked about because the movie was so badly received. And okay, so Ezra Miller, pretty good Flash. We'd say we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How about the new introductions? Let's talk about Aquaman.
Well,
Jason Momoa.
Aquaman, because I did watch the Aquaman movie, so I already knew who it was and all that. But I felt the way he came across in Justice League did not really seem like the person that I saw in the movie, even before
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So more like along the lines of.
It just felt like a totally different character. Well, not totally different, but that did not feel like the same character.
Could it be that, you know, because of the events of Justice League, he became the Aquaman that we knew? Like, you know, characters develop, they can change, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, looking at it that way, because you saw it in reverse, right? I mean, I saw it, you know, with Josstice League, Justice League first, and then I watched Aquaman. So to me, by the end of Justice League, there was sort of a continuation in terms of character development. Like, he had assumed the role of Aquaman, but he was still a little bit reluctant about that, you know, about all the responsibility it had, which was then played out in the beginning of Aquaman when Mira comes and looks for him and be like, hey, you know, you need to serve and come back and protect Atlantis or whatever. But like, you know, what do you think? I mean, okay, let me put it this way. The Aquaman that we saw in the fishing village seemed to have a complete change of character from one scene to the next. I think that's the one that we can talk about, because in the movie, in the trailers, for example, he's super serious. He's threatening Batman, right? Who's coming to get him and whatnot. You know, you can see that there's sort of like this really serious streak to him. But then, like a few scenes later, suddenly they're joking as if they're best friends, right? And then, you know, then he dives into the water all shirtless and stuff, because why not? Need something for the ladies, right?
Yeah.
And then he just dives off, you know, and becomes this surfer bro, right? So I feel like that's where Zack Snyder's involvement with Aquaman ended. And the Aquaman that became the movie Aquaman with James Wan, that's when that happened as well. Right? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I guess.
Can you stop throwing furniture around, please? Everyone can hear it.
I keep knocking your phone. Okay.
Okay, so Aquaman, fun addition to the movie. I suppose him and the Flash were like the comic relief, right? In a way, which is funny because they were super serious in the trailers. Well, no, the Flash was always funny. Even in the trailers, he was funny, right? When Zack Snyder was still on board with the movie, it was then in the reshoots. I think they made him even more comedic.
He was quirky.
I think that's the right word. Aquaman changed, like from the scene that we first saw him, and then just the next scene where they're walking into the water's edge. Suddenly he becomes a surfer bro, and he's sort of like joshing with Batman. And yeah, we'll get to Batman in a bit because Batman belongs in the bad parts column. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think she brought that what's the word I'm looking for? The motherly quality, I think.
Motherly quality, but she was also, well, in a good way, you could say she was trying to be the voice of reason. But to put it in another way, she was a bit of a wet blanket sometimes.
Yeah, she kept on saying no to everything.
Yeah, and I didn't watch the Wonder Woman movie, so this is the first time I've seen her in the movies.
I see. Okay, never mind. We'll watch. No, you saw her in Batman v Superman. Remember?
But she was
a very
small,
short cameo.
very short cameo.
Okay, no problem. What about the? Okay, we'll come to the last of the new additions.
Okay.
Cyborg, Ray Fisher. What did you think of his performance?
The performance is fine.
Yeah.
I get why he's so emo during the movie and so angry.
Yeah.
It's understandable. It's just that the way they introduced him for me and all the cutscenes with the father is. It took me a while before I realized how he came about. Otherwise, I was like, "What happened to him?"
Yeah. So here's the thing about Ray Fisher's part as Cyborg. A lot of it was cut out. A lot of footage that Zack Snyder shot was not used by Joss Whedon in the final cut.
Okay.
So we lost a lot of the backstory. That probably would have given you a bit more information.
More context.
Yeah, more
because
context.
Otherwise, it felt like the movie presented this character as if you're already supposed to know him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a little bit in Batman v Superman where the footage of the father using the mother box to regenerate his limbs and then turn him into a cyborg. We saw a bit of that, but that was the only context. We don't know why did he need to be saved and whatnot. So the context of that was that they were in a car accident and the mom died and he was the only one. The father was fine, but he was maimed, right? And so he needed to be repaired, and no modern earthly science could repair him. So the father resorted to using the mother box. And the thing is, that's why there's this undercurrent of resentment because, does he really want to live like this?
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
rather
is this
than
life?
Yeah. And he was resentful to the dad for keeping him alive when maybe, just maybe, letting him die would have been a better mercy. Because he comes back, he's not a man anymore. He's a cyborg.
And
right?
he mentioned something about how something changes every other day. Like
Yeah.
what was that? He find out he can do new things each time.
Yeah. So he could. Suddenly he knew how to fly. Suddenly he knew how to access the internet with his brain. Suddenly he had Wi-Fi. Yeah, the Wi-Fi drivers finished installing, right? And then suddenly he could detect mother box energy. So there's like this whole progression, right? And the sad thing was that we missed the first part of the progression where he became, the not cyborg yet, but half machine, half man. And we didn't see him as a man at all. We never saw him as a human being, which would have made his journey to cyborg all the more emotionally poignant. Right? And that's what Zack Snyder actually said on his Vero, where he said that the entire backstory of Cyborg, who was supposed to be the emotional core of the movie, was completely stripped out. And hopefully we'll see that in the Zack Snyder in the Snyder cut. So actually, he's a great actor, I think. Though I mean, with what little material he had to work with, with what little time he had on screen, he still managed to convey, that loss and that anger and everything. The problem was that we had no context for what that loss and what that anger was.
Yeah.
right? And we hear little snippets where it's like, oh, you know, my mother died and stuff like that, a car accident, and we don't hear anything else. And you know, it's very hard to be emotionally invested in that sort of character unless you have that context, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it was, yeah, I don't know. The more we talk about it, the angrier I get. Okay, so we talked about Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Now we come to the bad bits. Okay. Batman is now a one-liner comedian. Now, Ben Affleck, when he was doing the press tour for the movie, said very diplomatically that this version of Justice League is an interesting, combination of two directors' visions. Right? I think interesting was a very kind word. That's one. Second of all, merging never really happened because you can clearly tell what Zack Snyder did, and then you can clearly tell what Joss Whedon did, right? And from what I can recall from the movie of what was clearly Zack Snyder was, number one, the opening sequence. It had the slow-mo, which is a characteristic of Zack Snyder's opening titles, right? He did it for Batman v Superman. He did it for Watchmen. He did it for Watchmen. You know, he did it for 300. That slow-mo action, you know, that he loves to do, and he does it so well. And we had that super serious opening song, right? With you know the imagery of like xenophobia and stuff like that. You know, like anti-Muslim hate, all that stuff. That was like thrown in the beginning, and you sort of get the context because it's a continuation of what happened in Batman v Superman, where Superman was, you know, supposedly rejected by society because he's an alien, right? And he couldn't possibly understand humans. So that clearly was Zack Snyder, right, at play. And then you get one little bit more of Zack Snyder with the playing of the Superman theme, the haunting notes of the Superman theme. Just a taste. Don't pay 99 cents for the full song. Just get the 15-second preview. I think it was just 15 seconds because that was when they went to the Kryptonian ship, and then you had the Superman theme playing from Man of Steel before they tried to revive Superman, right? And you get that little bit, just a taste, the 15-second iTunes preview, and then we go back to this ridiculous, generic, jaunty like soundtrack by Danny Elfman. Oh God, I'm so angry about all this. Okay, back to Batman.
Yeah, okay.
Back to Batman. He became a one-liner, jokester, right? The most egregious example was when Superman tossed him into the police car, and then he was like, "Ugh, something's bleeding." What? Just you saw Batman in Batman v Superman, right? He's angry. He's pissed off.
Grim.
Yeah, he's grim. He
has no sense of humor.
None. He's. I mean, at the
he
end
was a very angry man.
Yeah, at the end of Batman v Superman, there was a slight light to his character, right? Where he's like, I failed him, right? And and then I'm putting it, gonna put a team together, gonna find these people to save the world, right? And there's like this tiny spark of hope. How do you go from that to making one-liners, as though you're Iron Man?
Yeah, I said that during the movie, and the thing is that the one-liners they gave him that is supposed to be funny had felt like the comedy relief in Marvel movies, but not even the good lines. Yeah,
that's. I mean, Batman doesn't quip, and if he does quip, it's savage. It's not funny. I mean, we've in the animated series, for example, like whenever Batman does the one-liners, he does them in a very sarcastic, savage manner. He doesn't do jokes, right? Because you have the Flash to do the jokes, you have Aquaman to do the jokes. You don't need Batman to do jokes as well. And that was. Oh man, I don't know. I could start yelling and that would completely overwhelm the microphone. But like, it's not Batman. Oh my God, what was it? What was that? Was that like a tribute act to like, I think you mentioned it in the middle of the movie, right? You said this is a tribute act to a very bad tribute act of Iron Man. To
Iron Man. There was one line where I forgot who he was talking to, but he basically, I think that someone was asking him what can he give to help or offer to help.
Oh, what's his superpower?
Yeah. Then he said, "I'm rich," and he said, "Was that it?" He said, "I have money," something like that.
He said, what are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
Oh, it was the Flash asking him.
Yeah, it was the Flash asking him. So it's like, you know what? In the context of it, it's sort of like I can see how it's the Batman that I know from the animated series and stuff like that, because it's sarcastic. It's not necessarily you're not meant to laugh in a way. We're just sort of like, oh, I can't believe he said that. Like, oh, he's savage, right? Versus, when Superman asks him, do you bleed? And then he's like, something's bleeding.
Because like when the Flash asked him that question, like, what's your superpower again? In my mind, I already expected Batman to just give him a stare and just disappear. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't need to say anything even.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't the car show the money already? That was a Vision. That was a Mercedes Vision Gran Turismo, which was actually a car that was made for the game, right? The video game wasn't actually supposed to be real until they made it for the movie. So it's a special one-off edition. So yeah. Batman was completely ruined as a character, I feel, throughout the entire movie. There were snippets of it where he was talking to Alfred, and that's I think one of the few Zack Snyder lines that stayed in. I'm not really sure, where Alfred was saying that I don't recognize this world. Time would be when all we had to do was deal with wind up explosive penguins, right? And Batman replies, oh, we don't have to recognize the world, Alfred. We just have to save it. Which sounds like a very Batman thing to say. It's like, it doesn't matter what the world is. We just have to save it, That, to me, felt a bit true to the character that Zack Snyder introduced in Batman v Superman. And then you have... something's bleeding. Oh, good Lord. Okay, I mean, can we agree that... Do we agree that Batman was kind of ruined?
He was not consistent with what I know from the previous movies, I guess.
Also,
It's just some cringe. Just cringe.
And Ben Affleck was so scarred by it. He just like, I'm done doing Batman. Like, no, which is really sad. I mean, we'll see Robert Pattinson as Batman next year, and we're gonna get 2 appearances by Batman, because he'll be in the Snyder Cut Justice League, and he'll be played by Robert Pattinson in the Batman movie, which is supposed to release next year. Okay, on to the big gun, Superman. A moment of silence for the character that was established in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman being completely tossed out the window by the time we got to sucky Josstice League. Okay. We've talked about the CGI face.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad. And then he honestly wasn't given much to do when you think about it.
He came in like more than half the movie is past. That's when they brought him in again, right?
Yeah.
And then there was some time spent with him not knowing who he was.
Yeah, I mean, that plays into the comics a little bit, where he, when he's resurrected, he sort of loses his bearings a little bit, right? So the whole fight scene in the park, I think that was in the original cut.
Okay.
Right? Because he doesn't say a word at all. It's all emoting via his face and stuff like that. Where the reshoots happened were when he starts talking to Batman. Then he's asked do you bleed? And then, that the grotesque smile that he had, he looked like a Joker, right? When he's like, do you bleed?
It's a very bad Instagram filter.
Yes, super terrible. Or a Snapchat filter, where, the one that alters the size of your face. Yeah, and it just looks so bad. And then, Lois Lane shows up, and
You smell nice.
Oh my God.
That line came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, what?
What kind of middle school bullshit is this? Like, what kind of elementary school nonsense is this crap? Where it's like, the first thing, this fearless Pulitzer Prize winning reporter Lois Lane, sees Superman, and the first thing she says is, "You smell nice." And in that exact voice as well, the voice that
Wait, when she said that, he was in his Superman.
No. He was shirtless.
Shirtless.
He was shirtless. He was wearing like raggedy pants, and they flew to the Kent farmhouse, out in Smallville, and the first thing he says, "You smell nice." Oh, come on. He's been buried underground for a while, and then he's been dunked in that icky Kryptonian water. And then he just fought in the park and probably is a little bit sweaty, unless she likes the musk of a man. You know, she likes the musk of the Kryptonian. That should be a product line that he should do, right? But I don't know. I mean, Lois Lane is another character that they also kind of ruined as well because
there's one thing though. In the previous movies, right? Was it ever public knowledge who Superman was?
No.
No, right? So they did the whole secret. They were really serious with the whole secrecy thing because there was one scene, I can't remember when Lois called Superman Clark when he was in his Superman getup, but there were police around. Then I was like,
when was that? Are you sure?
Yeah. I remember because I remember thinking, like, he's supposed to be Superman, but why are you calling him by a civilian name with other people around?
Are you talking about Man of Steel before he flies off to destroy the world engine?
Is it? Did I get it mixed up with that?
Either that, I'm not sure whether it happened in Josstice League. Like, I don't remember because I've tried very hard to not remember details of that movie, which makes it weird that we're doing this right now. But I think, which part? Oh, right. When she arrives in the car driven by Alfred? Is that it? And she steps out and she says, Clark?
You see, I don't remember that scene.
I don't either. Yeah. So, we're just going to chalk it up to like hallucinations from watching such a terrible movie. But yeah, Lois Lane's another one. They basically turned her into like the grieving widow. Like she would have basically nothing to do until pushing Superman back in the right direction. And that's just really, really sad.
She was happy doing fluff reports.
Yeah, she was happy doing nothing, which seems to be a betrayal of Lois Lane's character because Lois Lane is always driving forward, looking ahead, and she might second guess herself now and then, but she always, always, always believes in doing the right thing. And it's hard to imagine that in her grief, even in her grief, that she would have thought Clark would have wanted her to wallow, right? And just like drown in self-pity, goodness. It's just, yeah, I mean, like, you can't talk about Superman without talking about Lois and vice versa, right? Because their stories are so intertwined. But at the same time, it's like, gosh, Lois, jeez, like, what happened to you? If anything, she probably would have done everything possible to, do justice in the world, knowing that it was Lex Luthor's injustice that essentially killed Superman, right? And, and she would have gone on a crusade to find out any other megalomaniac billionaires and like bring them down for whatever reason, right? Which is what happened with Lex. But like, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, you smell nice.
I don't know. She didn't really stand out to me in the movie, honestly.
It's a shame. What a crying
she was
shame.
just there. Like, it was nice, I guess, when Superman resurrected and they got back together, but there was no spark. I could not see any spark. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I'm not really sure what to think about it.
Yeah, because there's so little to work with, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's so hard to think about it, because there's so little to work with. Speaking of very little to work with, the soundtrack. You've watched Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Right. You've watched Batman v Superman. You've listened to the amazing soundtracks put together by Junkie XL, aka Tom Holkenborg, and Hans Zimmer.
And we listened to it live.
Yeah, and we listened to it live. Yeah, when we went to watch F1 last year, we got to see Hans Zimmer live. That was amazing. Yeah, I cried. Remember? I can't believe I just admitted that out loud. But like, we saw Hans Zimmer's soundtrack being performed live. We saw Hans Zimmer live. So you know how good the music is.
Yes.
Right. You know that new iconic Superman theme song, which is called "What Are You Gonna Do When You're Not Saving the World," right? And the whole theme, the way it's built is that the beginning is very, mellow and all that, because that's supposed to represent Clark, right, hiding, in his civilian clothes and stuff like that. And then when danger happens, or his energy is needed, then the music starts to pick up. And then when he then transforms from Clark to Superman, the music erupts. The crescendo happens, and then you have that amazing like soundscape. When it comes to Superman. We only got the 15-second iTunes preview of it when they visited the Kryptonian ship. At no point when Superman makes his dramatic entrance towards the end, when he then does that classic, looks up into the sky, sees something going wrong, and then goes into an alley to change into his Superman clothes.
Yeah.
We don't hear the Superman theme at all. Instead, we hear this generic, like melodic generic music, preceding that, and then we go into the Flash's theme song for some reason, right? Which we hear for the first time when the Flash is fighting with Superman at the park, right? And then we have that, and then that is somehow the ending music. Like, what? The whole point of the movie was to bring Superman back, and then you don't even end the movie on Superman's song? Like, what?
Yeah. But because you see, I'm not that familiar with the music, so all that, I don't really register any of it. The only thing that registered with me is the difference in the music between this movie and the previous movie.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the Hans Zimmer so many times.
Yeah. That's an occupational hazard from sharing a computer room with me.
And it kind of feels like the little snippet that they allowed into the movie is just to remind you what you have lost.
Yeah. Oh man, when you put it that way, that just makes me feel very, very angry about the whole thing. I'm absolutely livid.
They also put a little bit at the end, right?
No.
At the movie, no?
No,
not the end?
nothing.
Oh, that was the only bit.
That was the only bit in the entire movie, and even then there was, that's it. I mean, okay. Before this descends into a rant about the music, Danny Elfman decides to then put in his Batman theme from the Batman movie in 1989 in here as sort of like some form of self-referential meta, look at me, wink and you'll miss it sort of moment, nudge, nudge audience,
Also
look what I've
lazy.
done. Also lazy. Yes, that's the word. So lazy. It's like, you have that whole body of work, and I get it, you want to put your own stamp on things, but like, I don't know, I suppose the studio should be at fault here, and the director, because they probably gave him the directions to like, hey.
Someone must also have thought it would be a nice bit of nostalgia for the fans that nobody asked for.
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe we should have just
Yeah.
looked for Michael Keaton and put him in the Batsuit instead, right? Or use the old Batmobile from the 1989 movie. Okay. Very real feelings about this. Because honestly, like, what distinguished the DC movies from the Marvel ones? Because, the storylines, all superhero storylines ultimately are similar-ish to each other. People lose other people. They have deaths in their families and stuff like that. And this is what creates heroes, right? It creates them out of tragedy. So the storylines are kind of similar-ish, right? If you were to look at, say, Iron Man and Batman, both of them lost their parents, right?
It's almost like there's a formula
Yeah, there's
that
like
everyone follows.
Correct, and like Iron Man loses his parents, Batman loses his parents, and then they both inherit billionaire fortunes and use it to fight crime, whatever. And then like Captain America and Wonder Woman are then very similar in the way that Wonder Woman, she lost someone that she loved, like how Captain America lost someone that he loved, Agent Carter, right? And then whereas Wonder Woman voluntarily withdrew from public life for 100 years after Steve Trevor died. What's his name? Captain America was frozen in ice. It's essentially the same thing. They're frozen out of time, and then when they come back,
They remove themselves from society.
yeah, when they come back, they're sort of out of time, that sort of thing. So what distinguished them was the music, because I say Wonder Woman, you can hear the theme song. You can hear it, right? That's the theme song with the war drums and the electric guitar mixed in with like these crazy percussions. Then you have Wonder Woman's music. Then you talk about, Superman, right? With the building theme and the crescendo and all that. And then you remember that the very dark Batman music in Batman v Superman. It's like so dark, it's heavy, right? And then Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman had that very off-kilter violin thing going on, and it's like in a minor key, so it sounds very, very
Like the way they do with the Joker.
Yeah, correct. So it's like, these are four very distinct themes that were in Batman v Superman in the one movie. Every character had their own sonic signature, right? And it was very, very clear what they were supposed to be. The only person that gets a new theme song in Josstice League is the Flash, who gets that like slightly airy-fairy, this like xylophone-ish kind of melody, right? And actually it works. That's the one thing I'll give it to Danny Elfman. He gave the Flash a pretty good theme, right? Or it could have been Tom Holkenborg's theme that he repurposed and then passed it off as his own. I don't know, because Tom Holkenborg actually said that he had actually started scoring the Josstice League before he got fired from the project. So maybe, I don't know. I refuse to give Danny Elfman any credit. Because so lazy. Like I showed you an edit that I did of the finale of the movie, remember? And I put Superman's music over the ending, right? And it seemed like the way it was edited matched up with all of the peaks and crescendos and all that in the Superman theme song, right up until the bit where he flies off into the sky, right? So, it would have been, again, I'm not a composer, okay? I don't know music theory. But even then, when I put it in, I was like, this works.
It's instantly better.
Yeah, it's instantly better, instantly improved. And I would share it with everybody. Unfortunately, I put the video up on my YouTube channel and YouTube took it down because copyright violation. Not only did I take footage from the Josstice League, I also put in music from Hans Zimmer. So they were not very happy about that. But if anybody wants to know what it sounds like, I'll unlist the video and put it in the comments for everybody to see. But here's the thing, like the music plays such a big part in the DC universe, right? Because you identify these characters by their themes. They all have very, very different themes. Like Wonder Woman's character, for example, like she's stifling a lot, okay? Because she lost, she's been around for thousands of years, right? And she has lost as probably more than she cares to admit. And so when she goes into battle, she goes in angry, she goes in pumped. That's why the music is so and stuff like that. Batman is weary. He's like, at the end of his rope almost, he's on the verge of losing his humanity. That's why he's all dark and grim, his music. And Superman, again, representation of hope and stuff like that. So you think about these themes and you think about the characters and you're like, yeah, this is who they are when it comes to their music. Only to have it all thrown away by, I don't know. If I was to give him the benefit of the doubt, I would say that probably the studio told him to do it. Like chuck everything out and then, or Joss Whedon told him to do it. Just throw everything out and then just do whatever. Oh, wait, you're feeling lazy? Use your Batman theme from 1989. That
Fans will love it.
Yeah, the fans will love it. They will love it so much. Oh my God. But yeah, the music, I don't know. That's like in the bad column for me, like for sure, 100%. How well is it shot though? Like if in terms of cinematography, I think, yeah, you can start with this one. I need to organize my thoughts before it becomes another rant.
I honestly don't know much about cinematography though.
That's fine.
So,
go on.
Like the way they shot the fight scene with Flash in that the place with all the demons.
The park.
Is it in the park?
Sorry. Are you talking about
I find the action scenes enjoyable, I guess.
Are you talking about the bit underwater?
Not underwater. When when they went, what's the guy, Steppenwolf? He kidnapped all those people and he held them at that place.
Yeah, that was underwater, the abandoned power station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Okay, that was. Yeah, I suppose that he had some cool scenes, right? For sure. I felt like...
Yeah, I think... the Flash was probably my favorite character in this movie.
Okay.
He made the movie a bit more bearable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I honestly think the best bits were already shot by Zack. And Joss Whedon used very few of them because he wanted to reshoot all the dialogue. And he just doesn't have the same eye for a shot as Zack Snyder does. Because I think about... Even Joss Whedon's best movies, like, for example, the Avengers, right? The 2012 Avengers. There are some questionable decisions when it comes to the cinematography in that movie, right? And, you don't get the sense of scale. Like, the gravity of the situation isn't very, very apparent. Avengers was enjoyable, right? Like, don't get me wrong. And it is honestly a milestone in cinematic history because it's the first time we had a big comic team up movie that required a few movies to be strung together before you had the big finale. In terms of like comic book movies with ensembles, X-Men did it first, right? And they arguably probably grounded their characters better than Marvel did. Like the X-Men were very clearly humans, right? They had virtues. They had flaws and virtues and all that, and we never shied away from those flaws and virtues, right, in the X-Men movies. But in the Avengers movies, kind of just paper them over, like sort of just ignore them a little bit, you know. Like we don't talk about Iron Man bringing a child into a war zone, for example, you know, or we don't talk about his obvious alcoholism and stuff like that. It's just played for laughs, essentially, right? And you know, there were problems, obviously, with Joss Whedon's Avengers and the cinematography. But then you kind of forget it because the movie itself was so much fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun movie.
Fun is a good word.
But
It's
it was
accurate.
not necessarily substantive, right? Whereas you know that with the DC movies, even if you don't agree with what they say, they have something to say, right? And that's, you know, ultimately then when you think about all the shots and everything that were done for this, you think that there's no weight. For example, when Superman arrives back at the farmhouse, again, this was heavily reshot in a way, right, that we know of, because the shots that were in the trailer were not present in the movie. And we know, understandably, you know, not every single piece of footage in the trailer gets into the movie, right? But the shots in the trailer were so much better than what we got in the movie, right? Because there was a lot of stuff that was done in the trailers that were homages to Christopher Reeve's Superman. Because he was wearing that flannel shirt in the trailers, right? The red and black shirt. That was a tribute to Christopher Reeve standing in the cornfield next to the Kent farmhouse as well, wearing the same shirt. It was a tribute, homage to the Christopher Reeve Superman. And in Man of Steel, there was a tribute to the Christopher Reeve Superman as well, when Superman is trying to fight against the gravity powers of the World Engine, right? And then his face changes and fluctuates. Remember in Man of Steel, his face for a few seconds morphs into Christopher Reeve's face, and then he rises up and destroys the World Engine, right? So it's sort of like a representation that Christopher Reeve Superman is passing the baton on to this Superman, because then once he accepts that part of his identity, he then flies up, you know, and rises, you know. So a lot of symbolism going on there. You won't find this stuff in the Marvel movie, that's for sure. Ooh, spicy hot take right there. Except for maybe Winter Soldier, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. So it just felt like ultimately at the end of the movie, the characters didn't necessarily change or grow. That's what I felt. That was the most disappointing thing for me, with the exception of maybe Cyborg. Right, because at the end of the movie, Cyborg assumes his more comic book accurate form, right? When instead of the pixelated armor that he would have had, it became like, you know, like a typical, almost RoboCop-ish looking kind of armor, right? And that was, you know, that was probably the only thing that changed. I mean, Aquaman was the surfer bro throughout the whole movie. Ezra Miller was just this dorky kid, you know, who eccentric dorky kid who does one-liners and whatnot, right? And comedy. Gal Gadot sort of goes from, you know, tragic-ish figure, mom, you know, the mom type figure who says no to everything, to sort of like a mom type figure who still does things, you know, who's agreed to do a few things. So I felt like the characters never really grew throughout the entire movie. And Batman was already different from the very beginning of the movie. He was already a one-line joke machine from the very beginning. So it just felt like the characters never really grew. And I think that's by far the most disappointing thing about the entire movie, honestly. And Superman, I don't know,
Although it was good to see him back as Superman, I don't know, this is a movie that I could have done if not watching.
Yeah. I apologize for putting you
when
through.
you said that I would not have missed anything by not watching it, I see why.
Yeah, because like, I think it's also part of the reason why Henry Cavill has played hardball about signing on to do more Superman movies, right? Because, you know, I'm pretty sure the fact that he appeared in public or, you know, on the live stream with Zack Snyder shows that he endorses Zack Snyder's way of doing things, right? And Zack Snyder was the one that gave him the opportunity. So if Zack Snyder isn't there for his next appearance as Superman, do you think he would want to become Superman under a new director? Especially after his experience with Joss Whedon.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit disappointed that he's not doing any more Superman movies though.
Ooh, I have some news to share about that.
What?
He is currently in contract negotiations.
Oh. But isn't who's the other actor? The one who's doing the next one?
There's no new Superman.
Oh,
there's
is
a new
it?
Batman.
Oh, there's Batman.
But there's no new Superman.
Okay.
Yeah. So The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, and written and directed by Matt Reeves, who did the Planet of the Apes trilogy. That is a standalone movie in the universe. It's like it doesn't necessarily happen within the DCEU timeline, right? And Warner Brothers are trying to move away from the whole shared universe thing, right? They're not. That's why they did Joker as a standalone movie. And the ties from, say, Aquaman to the Justice League movie was sort of very tenuous, were never really mentioned. Eventually when we watch Wonder Woman, you'll also see that there's very...
They're not trying to have them merge the worlds together.
Well, originally the plan was there would be a Justice League Part 1 and a Justice League Part 2. Originally. And the slate was actually released in 2016, right? There was a big hoo-ha. They did a live stream with Kevin Smith and Jeff Johns online, and they showed, all the timeline, all the movies. And actually this year, we were supposed to get the Green Lantern movie, which was supposed to come out in April.
Who is playing the Green Lantern?
There were rumors that they'd actually got an actor, right, to play the Green Lantern. And I think somebody went online saying that he was supposed to appear as the Green Lantern in the Justice League movie, but his part was cut out. Don't remember the name of the actor, but there was supposed to be, it was the Green Lantern Corps. It was not just the Green Lantern. It was supposed to be a reboot. Remember the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie?
No.
Okay.
Did I watch that? I don't think I watched that.
That's okay. The suit was animated.
I may have. I don't remember. I may have watched it, but I've forgotten.
Here's the thing, though. Ryan Reynolds would have been a perfect, and I say this honestly, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart. If they had done the character right, Ryan Reynolds would have been a great Green Lantern. He would have been a fantastic version of what was his name? My God, I can't remember. Oh, my mind's drawing a blank. The original name of the Green Lantern. Come on, do you remember? Do you know?
No.
Was it? No, not Kyle. No, not Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is the third Green Lantern. There's John Stewart, who's the second Green Lantern. And the first Green Lantern, oh my God, I need to remember his name. He was a pilot. Hank? No, wait, was it Hank? No. Come on. I gotta know this. I don't want to Google it. No, don't Google it. Don't do that. Oh my God, why is his name escaping me right now? Of all names to not remember at this moment in time. Okay, so he dates Carol Ferris. Carol Ferris is mentioned in Batman v Superman and in Man of Steel. She's the female assistant to General Swanwick.
Okay.
General Swanwick is the black guy, played by Harry Lennox. Fun fact: in the Snyder cut of the Justice League, it would have been revealed that the Martian Manhunter is in Justice League. Do you know which character he's supposed to play?
The Martian Manhunter?
Yes.
No, who?
So the Martian Manhunter is supposedly the 7th member of the Justice League. Okay? And, well, 8th, depending on who you ask. General Swanwick is supposed to be the Martian Manhunter. The last of his kind.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, the last of his kind.
Yes. So, the Martian Manhunter is quite OP, actually, his powers. He can phase through solid objects and stuff like that, and he can fly. And he can do all sorts of things, but obviously he hides it because, well, reasons. Gosh, what is the name? Why am I suddenly thinking of Hal Rudnick? His name starts with H. The name of the Green Lantern. Hal Jordan. Yes, that's the name. Ryan Reynolds would have been a perfect Hal Jordan, who's been voiced by Nathan Fillion in the animated movies. Anywho, back to that, the Green Lantern. So we would have gotten the Green Lantern this year. We would have gotten the Green Lantern Corps, right? Which then shows the origin of the Green Lanterns, how they came to be, and how Hal Jordan became one of them, right? And then there were rumors once upon a time that Idris Elba was being tapped to play John Stewart, who was the second human Green Lantern, happens to be a black guy.
Okay.
Whenever you hear black superhero, you immediately think Idris Elba, right? There's no one else that comes to mind. But maybe when Tenet comes out and John David Washington, has his breakthrough as a lead star, maybe he might be in the conversation as well. But yeah, we lost so much. I could tell you, there was a leaked script for Justice League, the Zack Snyder Justice League script that was apparently leaked. Who knows who leaked it? Some speculate it was Zack himself who leaked the script. But there are some scenes where 2 Green Lanterns actually come to visit Alfred and tell him about the coming Armageddon or whatever you want to call it. The Superman's black suit. We don't get that as well. Apparently, he makes an appearance in his black suit, and a few other things like the war. Like in the prequel, where we saw like Steppenwolf fighting like the armies of Earth.
Yeah.
There's actually a council in the middle of the battlefield where they strategize, and you hear Zeus talking, you hear the Green Lanterns talking, Kilowog, I think. You hear, the Atlanteans talking, you hear all of them talking, all of these characters actually having a war council. So it's not just like like an exposition dump with Wonder Woman doing the voiceover, right? So yeah, like we missed so much.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Talking about the gods and all that, sidetrack, go back a bit to the mother boxes. So one went to the Amazonians, right? The second one went to
Atlanteans.
The gods were right there. Olympus was right there. Why Earth?
Well, Olympus is on Earth.
Is it? Is it?
No,
the Olympians are there.
Yeah, so the Amazonians and the Olympians are the same. Remember,
Okay.
you haven't watched the Wonder Woman movie, so
No,
it's a
I
bit of a
haven't.
spoiler. So the backstory is that the Amazonians.
Wait, okay.
Yes.
In the DC universe, right?
Yeah.
The gods are Olympians,
Yeah, the old gods.
but they are from Earth.
Yeah, the old gods are from Earth. The Olympians, the Olympic gods.
Okay.
Okay, so you're talking about Zeus. You're talking about Hera. You're talking about all of these.
So
gods.
when they talk about man, right? Are they referring to these gods as well?
No, they refer to man as mankind.
But if the gods are also on Earth, why not hand it over to the gods instead of to man?
Well, the mother boxes were taken by the Amazonians, who were at the time under the Olympians. The backstory.
So it's like by proxy, lah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The Amazonians are offshoots of the Greek gods, like
Okay.
sort of like a daughter branch, of the family tree, like the Starks and the Karstarks, for example, right? So the Amazonians are under the Olympians. So then the Olympians gave it to the Amazonians to take care of, right? Because at some point the Olympians ceased to exist.
Okay.
Okay, there is a backstory to it. I have no idea how else to explain it in this short time that we have now. So that's why the Amazonians have one of the mother boxes, right? The Atlanteans, pretty self-explanatory. They're underwater and stuff like that. The Atlanteans themselves actually also come from Greco-Roman mythology. Okay,
Well.
if you remember the Aquaman movie, Atlantis was originally, an offshoot of the Olympian Empire,
Okay.
right?
Okay, yeah.
And then one of them tinkered way too much with powers that he barely
Neptune?
understood. Yeah, I'm assuming. Oh, Poseidon, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah,
But he was
okay.
just called the king of Atlantis. That's all he was known as, right? And so because of that, terrible power afflicted, he unleashed a terrible power which sunk Atlantis. And from there, the power wave that washed out from the golden spear, if you recall, also, modified the biology of all Atlanteans, right? And then created an entire underwater civilization, right? Yeah. And then the Earth box, the box for mankind was just buried in a hole 6 feet deep. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, we could rant a whole lot more about Justice League, I feel. Josstice League. Justice League is Zack Snyder's. Josstice League is Joss Whedon's. Ultimately, okay, if we're going to give it a rating out of 10. To put a bow tie on it, because bow ties are cool.
I like the
Tough one.
Flash.
The
I
Flash.
like the character of Aquaman, just not in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Batman, I think I'll give the movie a 4.
Out of 10?
Yeah.
So the redeeming qualities are the Flash.
It's like, it's a movie that I wouldn't mind, like, if I'm cleaning the house and I just need something on the TV,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind putting it on. Something that you don't have to constantly watch the whole time.
Yeah. Because the characters are the same at the beginning of the movie as at the end. Okay, fine. 4, huh? You go for a 4?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say 4 as well. The redeeming things for me would be, the Flash, definitely. I think Cyborg's performance, Ray Fisher's performance as Cyborg is underrated simply because he was given so little material to work with. But what he did do with it was you could see what he was trying to do with the character. And gosh, I'm trying to think why I'm giving it a 4. Like, what are the good things that would make me give it a 4?
Why don't you just start from 10? Everything you don't like, you minus a point.
We end up with minus 100. Nah, I'll say this. You know, I mean, I love Superman as a character, right? And it was good to see him back for sure. You know, it's just a shame. You could tell in the movie when he had been CGI'd and when he hadn't been CGI'd, and that took me out of the movie so much. And I think from that terrible experience, you know, that's why Henry Cavill just didn't want to do the character anymore, because clearly Warner Brothers themselves didn't respect the character. Like, they're willing to literally butcher his face, you know, in order to get what they want. And yeah, goodness, I just moment of silence for Henry Cavill's mustache.
But the movie still made a profit, right, at the box office? Did it?
I think it made about 600 million, maybe less than that. It was the lowest grossing of all the DCEU movies so far. It didn't do very well for obvious reasons. I mean, Wonder Woman did 900 million, Batman v Superman did 900 million, Man of Steel did 668 million. Justice League didn't even hit 600, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because, you know, people shied away from it and whatnot. And I think a lot of people went in expecting something and then got something very different in return.
I think, like, with those movies where you have superheroes from combined into one, people just expect something like Marvel.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just wish they'd done it differently. But hey, we're getting the Snyder Cut next year, so one more year, and then we'll have a review then, you know, about the Snyder Cut, and then I probably will be crying.
We'll have to do the review at least on the same day or at the latest the day after, because I'll forget so many parts.
Oh man, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I cried at the announcement. Never mind the movie. I don't know. I'm going to probably be a sobbing, gibbering wreck when that happens. But, you know, or it could be bad. It could be absolutely horrific. It could be worse than the Justice League. We don't know.
And then you'll never talk about it again.
Yeah, I'll never talk. I'll be like, you know what? I'm done with this history. I'm done with this. I'm done with the DC cinematic universe. I am so done. So yeah, I suppose, I'll give it a 4. I'll give a lot more credit to The Flash. Maybe, like, you know, 2 points to The Flash. Half a point to The Flash getting a pretty nifty theme song, right? And then 1.5 for Cyborg's performance, Ray Fisher's performance. But other than that, it was terrible. Any closing thoughts before we conclude this rant?
So any other superhero movies in the DC universe are definitely better than this one, right?
Okay.
Would they be?
Suicide Squad.
Okay, Suicide Squad. I've seen Suicide Squad.
Probably ties it for being just as bad, I feel.
No, I think Suicide Squad is worse.
Okay, so you'll be happy to note that Suicide Squad is getting its own director's cut.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, David Ayer is gonna go back and then re-edit the movie and like put in all the scenes that were shot and were cut out.
We shall see.
We shall see, yeah. So maybe, you know, this might help. And if both movies do well, it will just remind Warner Brothers and DC that they really, really, really should let their directors
do their jobs.
Because when they did it with Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman, I know I'm prefacing this because you haven't seen the movie, but when they did it with Wonder Woman, it was amazing. There were parts in that movie where I cried, where I shouldn't have been crying, but I cried. When they allowed James Wan to do what he needed to do in Aquaman, you got a pretty fun movie which also had that undercurrent of seriousness to it, which is characteristic of DC movies in general, right? They have that serious streak to them. And then you look at Shazam. David F. Sandberg was allowed to do what he needed to do with the character for Shazam. You know, you got this lighthearted...
I keep forgetting about Shazam.
Yeah,
I really
Shazam.
enjoyed that one. Shazam.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially it's big meets superheroes. You know, I mean, it's fun, and there is an undercurrent of seriousness to it as well, because you're talking about childhood trauma. You're talking about, you know, an orphan, a kid who was rehomed by the police, right? After his mother just casually abandoned him in a theme park. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute, where did this come from? It's like, you know, and it's got its serious undertone to it as well. But like, again, the director was just allowed to do what they wanted to do with it, and so you could see that in the final product. Whereas you could tell that Batman v Superman, the first cut, I know you haven't watched it, but this is for everybody else out there who has. You could tell that the very first cut of Batman Superman that got into theaters was a movie that was created by a committee. Because so many bits were chopped out. It was like, we need to keep it below 2.5 hours or whatever, And then we get the Ultimate Edition, which is 3 hours long and just so much better compared to the theatrical cut. And then Man of Steel suffered from pacing as well, because it feels like the studio stepped in and said, no, you need to chop this out. You need to chop that out. So it's like, when the studios finally realized that they shouldn't do that, when they should just let their directors do their thing, you get wonderful, wonderful movies like, Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Here's the thing. And this is, again, and Joker. Todd Phillips got to do the vision that he wanted to do.
Joker was great.
Yeah. So then it's like, can you imagine a Marvel movie like Joker? It's very, very difficult. I mean, there are plenty of tragic characters in the Marvel universe, in the comic books, that you could do a Joker-type movie. But today's Marvel, the Marvel that's owned by Disney, could they do a Joker movie?
They would not be able to do a superhero movie that was not child-friendly. Right? Is that right? They would not be able to do... That was not child-friendly.
And Joker was obviously not child-friendly. It's an R-rated movie. It's violent. It's dark. It's freaky. Especially when
it's unsettling.
Yeah, it's very, very unsettling. So then, you just wouldn't be able to imagine that happening in this day and age. But you never know, right? Marvel owns Fox now. Disney owns Fox now, which makes us wonder what will happen to the Deadpool movies. Because those are R-rated. What would they do Logan again, for example? Logan was an amazing movie, R-rated, definitely not for kids. But Logan was fantastic. That is easily one of the best movies of the decade, right? In the 2010s. I don't know. We could wax lyrical about this all the time, but yeah. So, closing thoughts? Wait, I already asked you that question.
Yeah, you asked me that.
Okay, so if there's nothing else there, we're going to end it right here. We've waffled on for a little bit. Man, I don't know. I'm just still so angry about the soundtrack. More than anything, I'm so angry about the soundtrack. I will always be angry about the soundtrack. But, that's... well, we might rant about it again some other day, but I suppose that's it for now. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening to us waffling. You have been listening to the Game and Story podcast.